I'm going to start recording here. Sorry about that. Let's go and look at the...
speaking of the Kundalini itself, that's a whole nother thing. How Kundalini works, what it feels like, the processes itself. That's a whole series of talks. Really, it's.
Could you give an overview of Kundalini? Just like how would you describe Kundalini for someone who is just hearing about it now? And why is this important? What has that to do with anything about awakening? What is the role of Kundalini when it comes to personal transformation?
When Kundalini first kicked in a big way for me, I barely had any clue what it was. I had heard the word before, but I'd never read about it. I never talked about it.
So it's like sitting in a Ferrari and you have no idea what a car is.
Yeah, that's a good one. Wow. Ferrari, yeah. So, in retrospect, what I understand it to be now, and this is my opinion, lots of others out there, the animating life force energy inside of all of us is what Kundalini is. It's actually infinite intelligent consciousness that permeates everything throughout the universe. It's the animating force behind all living things. I mean, I always use the example, if you went into a morgue and saw a dead body laying there, and you're standing next to it and you're looking at it, what's the difference? And that body just died 10 minutes ago, let's say. What's the difference between you and it? Nothing except this life force, this intangible.
So what's the difference between
energy.
Kundalini and prana?
It's all the same. It's just different shades, colors, intensities of the same core conscious energy.
Okay.
So all of us, and again, this is my opinion, all of us have this animating life force in us, and that is Kundalini energy. It's the same energy that took when the sperm entered the egg and you began growing inside your mother's womb. Kundalini, life force, conscious energy was directing every stage of that process, infinitely complex, to turn you from a literally invisible, microscopic, fertilized egg into you.
Isn't it amazing, like that intelligence that can do that?
So that life force was cranked up at a high volume as it was creating you, right, in the womb. Then you were born, your life energy was still really strong. And then that same energy, life force, and the intelligence behind it cultivates, grows, changes us constantly until we grow into adults. And even then, of course, it's still going. But after we're born, the Kundalini, let's say, I like to visualize it as water coming through a faucet. And you can turn that faucet wide open and it's coming out at full force.
Yeah.
Or you can take it way down so it's just dripping.
Yeah.
And anything in between.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're growing in our mother's womb, that faucet's pretty wide open because it's working fast and strong to create a new being. After birth, and once we sort of get used to this little body we're in, Kundalini sort of life force energy, in a sense, throttles way down to just sort of an idle speed. Our body keeps growing and we go through our daily activities, and Kundalini is at an intensity to match our needs and the experiences we're having. And the reason I say it that way is if we happen to have a dramatic experience, something that's incredibly joyful or something that's incredibly traumatic, Kundalini may crank up again to a good amount in order to help us deal with that. And then once we've kind of handled it, it'll settle back down to its normal idle speed.
Would you say childhood traumas can do that?
They seem to put kinks in the flow. It's like the pipes that the Kundalini energy is flowing through are starting to get encrusted or something from the inside, right?
Blocked in some way.
That's kind of how I visualize traumas. They actually impede the flow, cause turbulence, and so on. Yeah. So again, Kundalini's moving through us. It's moving at kind of an idle speed. It meets needs up and down as need be, but it's generally at an idle speed. What seems to happen, just to get cut to the chase, what seems to happen with a so-called Kundalini awakening, you're not getting something you didn't have before. You still have life energy, life force energy. It just now cranks way up in order to cover we got some skeeters running around here, flying around. Kundalini cranks up in a big way at a certain point in each soul's human lifetimes in order to deal with this ego thing we've created. And we talked about that last time, imagining 100 lifetimes and how that ego structure is formed. So it seems to me that from a spiritual point of view, Kundalini is our natural life force. Our soul has matured to a point where the ego has fulfilled its purpose. Kundalini cranks up in a big way in order to carefully deconstruct and take apart this ego that we've developed and fine-tuned over many lifetimes. And it's an insanely intricate process to dig its way through every nook and cranny of your ego, take it apart without killing you and freaking you out until you've got a clean slate.
Yeah.
And that's what happened over 4 years with me.
And so in this process, several times you were thinking you were going insane, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, I'm saying this because I want people to understand this is not just a lot of energy. It changes your psyche. It feels like dying in a sense. And the mind will freak out in so many ways and create all kinds of stories of why this is not happening or it shouldn't happen. And what about me? And all these things.
And fortunately, on the flip side, you have periods of just unimaginable bliss and joy and happiness. And then that fades away, and here comes another issue as another part of you is getting dissected. So we don't really realize how much our identity means to us. In my little Enlightenment Traps
not
article,
until it's in danger.
Yes. And I mentioned in the Enlightenment Traps article, booklet, that it's our most treasured, prized possession, our sense of identity. And if somebody challenges our identity in any way, we feel we have to defend ourselves because that's me. And you're challenging me, and that's not cool, and I'm going to argue right back. Yeah. And so once Kundalini starts taking apart these multiple identities we carry around that are all interlaced with each other, it's scary. It's intense business. Your very sense of you is being destroyed.
For you to, so you obviously, I'm assuming you didn't lose your mind, or when you lost your mind, but you didn't go insane. I can already hear, so everybody, if you have questions, write with big letters. I will go through all of it. So if you have questions as we go along, write it with big letters. Anything written with small letters, I will not read. Now I lost my train of thought. That was something I wanted to, So there's going to be people who are saying to themselves, listening to this, oh, so it's all about Kundalini? Cool. I'll do everything to raise the Kundalini and then I'll reach enlightenment. And that's it. What are you going to say to that?
That's exactly what an ego would think.
Yeah.
And no, that's not true. This life force energy in each of us is vastly more intelligent than our finite mind. It knows everything about you. It created you from that little fertilized egg. It knows everything about your past lifetimes, which you don't consciously know. It knows everything, but it just kind of sits in the background during normal lifetimes and, hums along at a normal idle speed as you gather in all your experiences and your soul slowly gathers wisdom and maturity. So that's what's happening. And I don't know when it determines a soul is ready or what the criteria are, but when that happens, it spontaneously turns on to a much higher volume.
With or without any spiritual practice?
Nothing matters. It determines when you're ready.
Okay.
We talked about this a bit before. If you're in that 100th lifetime and your soul has, let's say there's 10 different areas of the soul that need to mature until it gets to that magical threshold when everything's ready. Well, it could be that your final little piece you need to experience in this final lifetime could be being a murderous criminal, for that matter. We can go to extremes in order to get that experience, and that then finishes the job and the Kundalini kicks on. There's no telling what's going to trigger it. There is absolutely no way to know.
Yeah. There's people who have been junkies and alcoholics.
Yes.
There's a story of a guy, he was a raving alcoholic. He was pretty much killing himself, snorting cocaine and drinking like something that would have killed anybody. And he was one day so drunk, he just collapsed in his bed and was laying in the bed. And then the next day he was awake and he was not an alcoholic anymore. And he was just, have you heard
like that.
Wayne Lickerman or something?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was the guy.
That's his story, basically.
Yeah. And so he just...
Now, it took a while. It took a while. Yeah, okay. It wasn't an overnight thing.
Oh, okay.
Contrary to popular opinion, there are no instant awakenings. There's no instant enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Everybody carries around an ego that's full of countless chunks of dirt and mud and grit and slime. And we've got to purge all that. We've got to detox from that. And that takes time. Some people, it may take a lifetime or two, for that matter. For me, it took 4 years. For other people, maybe 10. Some people have real intense Kundalini like I did for 4 years. Others have much milder Kundalini. It's still elevated, but it's much milder, maybe for
years.
20 or 30 or 40 years. Yeah, and it's a slower process.
Yeah.
They may not even notice their upheavals, let's say, their detoxification process may be relatively mild and just be relatively easy to handle. Whereas mine, being on volume 10, was just slam, and I was thrown back and forth into all kind of crazy states.
So I would just inject here that, so I agree with you that no amount of meditation, breath work, all that stuff can like bring you to awakening unless the Kundalini is ready, like unless the energy is ready. However, I would say from my own experience that, so I had my near-death experiences, and after my second near-death experience, I had my, I would say that was kind of like where the big shift were happening. But after, I started an intense meditation and breathwork sadhana program, and that just made everything even more crazy. Like it just created even more Kundalini, and I'm happy I did it. I did it like religiously for like 7 years, and I'm happy I did it because it really refined the process and was speeding up the process.
Well, it sounds like that practice gave you a foundation as the Kundalini or life force energy, if you prefer, as it did its work. This was your stabilizing foundation.
It's kind of like, it's a good analogy. I would describe it like you have a water hose with lots of pressure, but you don't hold it. And it's kind of It's all over the place.
Right.
The energy is still flowing, but it's just very like not scattered, but more chaotic.
Yeah.
And that could have been ugly, I think. Like it could have expressed itself in life in ways that may have been dramatic. and then by doing this practice, I kind of like channeled it and I made it more smooth and just like,
there you go.
I think that's what if I was to describe it.
So yeah, all practices have their place.
Yeah,
And
I think
if
so,
somebody strongly desires to get into one or two or three, go for it. I mean, that's your soul talking to you. I need this now.
Yeah.
That's why the desire is there. Where do you think your desires are coming from? Right? Yeah. So practices all have their place. If it's before Kundalini really starts rocking and rolling, then the practice is priming you and prepping you for the process. It's fine tuning your mind, body, and to be able to tolerate the intensity of the process. If it kicks in, maybe in your case, after that second near-death experience, your soul was telling you, okay, intense years are coming. We need some stability here to be able to navigate through this process with the best degree of grace we can muster, right? And so that helps you to deal with that. So with my Enlightenment Traps article, though I seem to be poking fun at every practice and kind of dismissing it like it's unimportant, that's not my point at all. They all have their place. The problem is thinking that the practice is going to give you enlightenment. That's false.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Totally. Let me put it this way. I was practicing intensely with a lot of people, like in this spiritual group, out of living with a spiritual master, etc. And we were doing these practices together, and I was following these people for years. And a lot of them, I didn't see anything happening for them, like at all. So it also depends on how you practice, how you enter a practice, how you enter a spiritual practice. And the mosquitoes are still one. They really like you.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Okay. Blood, I think.
So good. Let's see. Are you going to give us suggestions on how to achieve this kind of oneness? Lynn says.
Yeah, Lynn, good question. What's going on with Kundalini is that to try to force it to come on, bad move, bad idea. You know, I hear people and talk with people who are deeply into Kundalini yoga, for example, and doing all these practices and odd breathing techniques and body postures and diaphragmatic work and so on in order to try to artificially snap Kundalini out of its sleep, as a lot of people think of it. Bad idea. Kundalini, again, knows what it's doing. It knows you far better than you know you. And it knows what you need, when you need it. And in order to get you moving in that direction, it imparts desires into your consciousness. And your desire is what leads you to what you need to do next, good or bad. So our intelligent life force energy knows what it's doing. Let it run the show. Don't try to artificially force this in order to have blowout mystical experiences or whatnot. That may happen, but your nervous system, your endocrine hormonal systems, your cardiovascular system, it's probably not ready to withstand that much energy artificially forced on. Not a good idea.
But what if the calling to do a practice is coming from the Kundalini and not from the mind?
Then go for it.
Yeah.
It may be part of the preparation for Kundalini to come later.
Well, I can say that after my near-death experience, when I, like, even on the other side, I got this download that it's time to become a yogi. Like, it's time to just go super yogic on it. And so when I came back, I was just like, okay, I'm going to be a yogi until things now. And so maybe maybe the Kundalini ask you to refine yourself through these practices. Maybe so. So I'm just trying to open up a few doors, because I think some people are ready to do that, and some people are not ready for that. Some people are supposed to do that, and some people are not supposed to do that. So it depends. But if it's a mental thing, if it comes from the mind, you're forcing it. If it's a call from your heart, follow it.
As long as you can tap into what your heart is saying, right?
Exactly.
So many of us are so mentally oriented in our heads all the time. You know, an obvious contradiction presents itself when I describe this stuff. It's a paradox. It's, if Kundalini is infinitely intelligent life force in each of us, and it's giving us the desire to artificially awaken Kundalini, then why would it tell us to do a bad or wrong thing? Well, right?
Okay.
You see the contradiction.
Those are some good questions.
Yeah. So what it looks like to me is that if someone is just gung-ho about artificially activating their Kundalini no matter what, because they want the blissful experiences and they want all the wonderful bells and whistles, Kundalini, divine intelligence, knows you need a taste of that experience, and the fact that that experience is going to fade away again, and you're going to be frustrated as hell, and you're going to really desire whatever it's really going to take to get Kundalini activated in a healthy, natural way. You don't know what that is yet. But Kundalini is basically going to slap you across the face, give you an experience, and then it's going to give you all the negative side effects of artificially trying to force it.
Yeah.
And then you'll come to your senses more and realize forcing is not a good idea. But some of us are so headstrong, we gotta force it anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way we do it.
And we gotta have our learning lessons. Come what may, you know. So
we're tough. We human beings are tough slabs of rock sometimes.
Yeah, we're total retards. So suggestions on achieving this kind of oneness. The short answer is what?
In the biggest picture, just follow your desires. Do what the deepest sense of yourself is asking you to do. So then the obvious question from that is, how do I hear that? How do I sense that? How do I know how do I get rid of all the craziness in my life and just listen to that small voice within that knows best? And that's, again, where practices come in. That's what meditation, that's probably its ideal function, in my opinion.
Meditation.
Just to turn everything else off and listen and watch the thoughts. And after a while, this train of thoughts we've habituated ourselves into constantly creating just starts to settle down, because you're not giving it any attention anymore. Finally, that background train of thoughts just starts to settle down, eventually fall apart periodically, and suddenly we can tap into a much greater realm that's inside of us and listen carefully at what I should do next, if anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes just sit there.
Yeah. Or maybe just be super normal, go to work and pay your bills, and
that would be very frustrating.
Okay. Carol is asking, I question the concept on reincarnation and evolution of souls. Do you really think all those past lives represent a gradual upward process? Aren't there lives of lost stew that create karma to be dealt and hopefully resolved in future lives? Do you consider yourself a Buddhist?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what the question's asking, but
okay, so first of all, are you a Buddhist?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
But there's a lot of good Buddhist concepts that are extremely helpful along the way to understand some things and orient your practice, orient
I think the Buddha, he knew quite a lot what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he also went through some Kundalini.
Gradual upward process.
Okay, so I have a comment on the gradual upward process. We spoke at one point, you and I, about the word sin, and to sin mean to miss the mark. And so when I hear that, it's like the bullseye is the mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so human linear thinking, we always think about getting up, like higher consciousness, higher level of consciousness, or you're raising in the degrees of your career, you're getting a higher salary, and everything is higher. When missing the mark is meaning missing the bullseye. And what I'm seeing is just like you take there's this pi is a number that the more numbers you put behind, the more precise it is, but it keeps on for eternity. And I think in consciousness, it's about centering it. It becomes more and more centered into its original state of source from its origin. It's so I don't see higher or lower. I see more precise.
Right.
And so lifetimes, because I had my experience when I saw all my lifetimes unfolding at themselves at the same time. Like, so beyond time space, all your lifetimes are happening now. Yeah. And so there's no before lifetimes and after lifetimes and future and past. There's no, so when we talk, for example, about the 100 lifetimes, then this one lifetime is not like the highest or the lowest. It's just the most precise. It's just the most centered. It's the most pure lived lifetime that has the highest degree of clarity of its own true essence of who it really is. But all of them are having the same essence. And so I just wanted to say that because like when she's asking gradual upward process, I just want to dismantle this linear thinking. It's not up and down. It's more. It's just a gradual, more precise incarnation.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah,
so that's a good way to say it. So instead of, because as soon as you start talking higher or lower,
you're judging it like crazy.
Judging, right?
Like,
whereas
so,
if you say you're getting more and more precise,
yeah,
that implies you're already on the right track, which you can't be off track.
You can't not be on the track.
Yes. But you're honing it, you're refining it. Yeah.
And there is a moment in one lifetime where there is this quantum leap, where there is a definite shift. Like you described last time, where instead of it's all about acquiring from outside, suddenly it's an internal. The look goes in. That's the shift.
Yes.
And then
repent, right?
You're repenting, turning around, and suddenly that lifetime's the quality of that lifetime is very different from all the other ones. Mm-hmm. So it's just more precise because now it's looking at them more in the correct direction, or whatever you can call it.
Excellent.
So Carol, I'm pretty sure we didn't answer your question, but can you please just write it in a way so I can understand it a little more better. And Carol also says, can we say the Kundalini is the life force passing up and down the spine through the chakras centers between the root and the fontanelle?
Yeah, that's certainly true. And
I see this double.
Yeah, there's apparently a main channel and two side channels that intertwine. But I don't see any point in getting hung up with any of that. Kundalini is going to run through whatever channel it needs at any time it needs to deal with whatever's in front of it. And so you can be feeling Kundalini in your root chakra, you can feel it in your crown, you could feel it in your left big toe. It doesn't matter. Wherever the energy of that block is stored, it's going to concentrate there. You're going to feel heat. You're going to feel tingling sensations. It's really weird what goes on physiologically. But as far as where it travels and the process of going up through the chakras, generally, yes, that feels to be true. As the different chakras seem to be associated with different life stages and life issues and so on. Like our lower chakras are more survival oriented, whereas our higher chakras are more subtle energy, esoteric oriented. Yeah, that's all true. But don't worry, you've got blocks all throughout your being, and Kundalini is going to run all over the place dealing with them.
Yeah. I even heard Tibetan Buddhists saying we have like 84,000 chakras. So there's enough to choose from.
There you go.
And we don't need to know them all. But it's a good question, Carol. Thank you so much. Cheryl is saying Kundalini state of
Constancy.
Constancy. What is that? Is that a word?
Staying constant.
Okay. Applications. It's good I have you here. You speak English. Kundalini state of constancy. Applications available. Alone as one ? Do you understand that?
Let me read it again. Kundalini state of constant.
Ease of life. Shift to with others. How can Kundalini be mutual? Implement love, etc. ? Such as emanate, such as an influence awakening unto all people, life forms, a peace for all comprehension ? Create creation ? Such as in tool beyond meditation time to instant application living.
Wow.
I don't understand.
Well, one thing I'm getting out of that might be, how does Kundalini influence awakening unto all people? Now that's a pretty nice question there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you've ever been around anybody with really active, high volume Kundalini, they affect you in ways that's amazing, unbelievable. In fact, certain gurus, it seems to me, have had their very active Kundalini stage, and for whatever reason, Kundalini decided to just stay at high volume. They have a very tough time functioning in our world usually, but they seem to be able to transmit Kundalini energy to others.
I have a teacher, he's like that.
Yes. And I had a period during my 4 years where that was happening spontaneously through me. I wasn't trying to do it, but whenever I was in the presence of other people, they would start feeling all kind of things, and they would get very emotional. And many would say that this feeling of love and peace and happiness would just overcome them. And they were like little children, just wide-eyed at the world and just amazed.
So this is what people call grace or Shaktipat?
Yes, exactly. And it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't doing it to anybody. It was just happening.
Happening by itself.
Yeah. And then maybe, that phase lasted for, I think, about 4 months. And then afterwards, when it subsided and that so-called siddhi ability stopped, I would be with the same person again, and he would be like,
happened.
Where's the happiness and bliss thing? Like, it's not up to me. I'm not doing it.
And luckily you did not get ego attachments to it. There was
that's
because
very common.
A lot of people do that. They start tripping on themselves, and then even sometimes I've seen then the city stays because they obviously have something to learn here
to work through.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I mean, we have many rabbit holes we could go down. Okay. So Shaul says, yes, joy in the midst of a wonderful to say it. Joy in the midst is a wonderful to say it. Carol says, did a guru guide you in activating the Kundalini in you?
A good one, Carol. There is, I guess, a little interesting twist in my particular process. I was drawn to meditation and what I call toning. There might be a better word for this, but just toning the different frequencies of the chakra, om or different tones. anyways, I got into this practice real intensely along with my meditation. And I did that for probably 10 years before my Kundalini activated in a big way.
And just, do you feel that that had absolutely nothing to do with your Kundalini awakening?
It absolutely helped prepare me
for the Kundalini.
For it,
yeah.
Yes. And just in a practical daily life way, it helped me focus on things. Your idea of getting more and more refined, that's exactly what it did. Mm-hmm. It helped me to do that. As far as my sense of spiritual direction, why I was even doing all this stuff. At first, I just started meditating because somebody said it was a good thing to do, right? No. Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But as I kept doing it and the benefits accrued, then a deeper reason for my interest in it started to show itself. Okay, so as that went along for a number of years, then I met, through happenstance, a meditation guru that was his prime practice he recommended was meditation. But he was also a tantric master of some sorts and had Kundalini active and often did Shaktipat. I wasn't looking for him for that reason because I had no clue what any of that even was yet. But nevertheless, he had these week-long retreats in the United States, and I went to several of them. And what he would do at the end of the retreat is he would do Shaktipat on everyone. And so we did that, and the time, 3 times I went to retreats with him. The first 2 retreats, receiving Shaktipat, I didn't feel a thing. The third and final time I went on a retreat with him, at the end of that retreat, he gave 2 Shaktipats to everyone. The first one, I didn't feel anything. The second one, however, I felt a distinct energy run down to my root chakra, where it said Kundalini remains dormant in the human being. And I felt this energy go into the root, and what I can only describe as, think of earthworms. Everybody knows what a worm is, right? An earthworm. It was like a ball of 100 earthworms. And when that energy went in, they all started moving. And it felt just like this.
That sounds horrible.
It was, again, another one of those weird Kundalini things. So that lasted for about a half an hour. You know, I'm moving my back around, walking around. What is this? And then it just subsided, and that was the end of it. So it was just this odd experience. What I later realized was that was sort of an artificially induced temporary volume increase to my own life force Kundalini energy. And it gave me a little taste of what was to come. So that actually got me interested in the whole subject of Shaktipat, Kundalini, and all that. And I started reading and studying and asking. And so that served to, again, refine my interest and focus in what was going on with me. So yeah, that was my little introduction to it. But after that, it was much more of a spontaneous process.
Yeah. Okay. Karen is saying, discuss fasting and spirituality, thoughts on intermittent fasting. So what has fasting to do with any of this, and spirituality? Fasting and spirituality. What is the connection?
Yeah. Basically, whether it's the physical body we're talking about, the mental and emotional subtle bodies we're talking about, or spirituality in general, all our subtle bodies, in order to, let's say, be more in touch with divine, we have to remove that which blocks the access to that. Largely, we create our own blocks. I guess we create all our own blocks, really, and that's the whole business of experiencing these finite, dense lifetimes, is to have experiences and to, frankly, create a lot of blocks, a lot of beliefs, a lot of crap inside of us that serves to block us from a direct connection to divine. with physical body problems, fasting, not eating for a period of time, allows our body to kick in a bunch of innate instinctive processes that help to quickly clear away debris and blocks from better functioning.
Mm-hmm.
So on a physical level, fasting removes blockages, so functioning is better. On the spiritual level, Kundalini removes blockages, so function better. Our divine connection is stronger. It's exactly the same process. It's just a matter of intensity and how many subtle bodies it takes in and acts on, we could say.
Mm.
Yeah. So physical fasting, just simply not eating, just drinking water, the body instinctively removes as many blockages as it can, as fast as it can, so that we can survive as long as we can.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
You can look, if you look at it from that simple way, that physiological sort of medical way, then it's just a physiological process that makes everything work better. So it's a good thing.
Mm.
Actually, fasting affects all our subtle bodies as well, just not nearly as intensely as an activated Kundalini does. But it's the same basic process. And in fact, if you really want to look at it, it's Kundalini that's driving our fasting process as much as it's driving a spiritual revelation process. It's the same business. It's just different perspectives, different ways of looking at it. Yeah.
Did you do fasting before your Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, I was involved with natural hygiene, and fasting is an inherent part of natural hygiene, health maintenance programs, processes. So fasting is something I'm familiar with, have been doing it a long time, and have supervised many hundreds of fasts for other people. So I've seen what it does for a lot of other people. And over time, and especially after my Kundalini process, it became clear that what I'm witnessing for myself and with other people with fasting, and how the body very meticulously and carefully removes blocks and functioning happens better in a very natural, organic way. So the same is with Kundalini. Once it knows it's time and it turns up, the process goes in a very organic, natural way, totally orchestrated by the wisdom inherent in Kundalini, as it carefully removes blocks so that you not only connect more directly with divine, but it knows to do it in a way that doesn't kill you.
Hopefully. Well, I feel fasting is maybe one of the most powerful healing processes you can do for your body. And I totally agree with you with what you just said with the spiritual connection. And because a lot of the blockages we're having are on a cellular level, and if the body can release it, then your mind also changes. And so it opens up, and it makes it easier for the Kundalini to do its work.
It's kind of interesting. One way I look at it is fasting comes from the ground up. It comes from the organic, dense cellular level, and cleans that, and makes little impressions on the more subtle bodies, but it's really working down here. Whereas Kundalini is coming from the top down in a sense, and it's starting in the subtle bodies and percolating up to, and finally includes the dense physical bodies, and you feel all the sensations of Kundalini moving through you. So it's kind of like they're coming from different directions, but they're doing the same thing.
That's awesome. So let's I want to do a fast. Next week I start.
All right.
I was planning on fasting as soon as I have that machine, the Korean machine.
Yeah.
And it just arrived. And so I'm wondering if there's people here who are interested in doing a fast together. And so you can give us some feedback on that. We can do a group fast maybe. Next question. Yeah. Sarah says, can you give more details, examples of how Kundalini unraveled your ego?
An important point is to see ego as a collection of millions and millions and millions of bits of stuck energy. Oh, geez, we're going to open a can of worms with this, aren't we? Um, it's not like we have an ego, as if it's a solid thing that's just like my fist. We have to remove my fist. No, it's not like that at all. It's not a fist. It's millions and billions of microscopic pieces that are kind of glued together in this flimsy network, because your ego changes all the time. Think about it. If ego is something, we'll say, is made up of all of our beliefs and all the experiences that we took in that manifested as that belief, then I'm having a hard time saying this. It's so difficult to describe this. All these little pieces get sort of woven together into what we call, with one little word, ego. But it's
a thing. We call it a thing. Like there's all these elements, and we call it a thing. Like
yeah, and so I guess the most important thing about what I'm trying to say is an ego actually consists of millions and millions and millions of bits of information that come along with an energy component, and they're effectively stuck, and they're stuck all together. And the net result is what we call our ego. So when divine source determines it's time to unravel all this, it has to be unraveled a bit by bit by bit. If you've ever seen a big wad of rope and string and fishing line on the beach by the ocean, it's been tumbled to the ocean for years and years and picked up all kind of bits of seaweed and who knows what. And it's all incorporated into this crazy, chaotic ball of twine, right? You can't just go boom and burn it up. You have to carefully pick it apart.
That's a good analogy.
By bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what Kundalini is doing. If it were possible to instantly enlighten, to instantly remove that whole ball, you'd probably just burn up. Spontaneous combustion.
There's been a few, Ramana Maharshi, he was like, he just laid down one day, he was a kid.
Yeah.
And then so there's been very few examples of people where it just went.
And what I was shown about that is very likely, because that happened at such a young age with Ramana, very likely his previous lifetime, he did 98% of the work.
Yeah.
And then died.
Yeah.
And then the next lifetime came and he needed one or two more experiences he was done.
Yeah.
So in any case, as far as I've ever seen, and the only way it makes sense to me is that this ball of chaos that we call our ego, has to be carefully, surgically taken apart and removed. And with each extraction comes a little bit of healing, a discharge of the energy that came with that bit, that belief, and a little bit of healing of what remains. So if we can imagine our ego is like a block, as Kundalini's working on it and extracting, there's little voids, there's little holes, there's little passages through this block. It's like, it becomes like Swiss cheese, right? And
more and more transparent.
Yes. So what we felt as a solid sense of me, my ego before, is now getting kind of flimsy. It doesn't feel so solid anymore. We're not so sure of ourselves anymore.
That's the scary part for the ego.
Yes. And the more it gets chiseled away, the less comfortable you feel about anything. And that's when it gets really trippy, because everything you were so sure of and felt certain about and thought was real no longer does. So you don't know, you start to doubt yourself about everything. And though that sounds like no big deal, it's the hardest thing you'll ever go through, because everything your life is built on, everything you believe to be true, is dismantled. And that not only includes your sense of your past, but it also includes all your future hopes and dreams. And so even all the good things are going to be taken apart.
Yeah.
That's really freaky stuff.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, it's not necessarily awesome. So Rob C is saying, what can one do to elicit their own Kundalini experience? And are there any physical healing benefits from having a Kundalini experience? I kind of feel you touched in on it already.
Yeah, somewhat. With Kundalini, all sorts of physical, mental, and emotional problems just kind of fade away, or at least they get greatly softened. You can kind of imagine if Kundalini were completely ruthless, it would just take us apart until nothing exists. We just move on to another dimension, right? But in most cases, here we are still dealing with this world. It doesn't eliminate this body totally. So just the process of removing blockages and removing false beliefs that we carry around frees up energy tremendously, and things can just flow and move internally much more naturally and organically. So a lot
kind of like fasting also.
Yep. Again, there you go. Same process.
When you're
right?
fasting, like I remember suddenly when walking was like, wow, I'm so light, and the joints and muscles are
everything's flowing,
like just flowing, and the aches and pains are gone, and so things just become smooth. And that's so Kundalini, I would say, in a metaphysical sense, it's the same, just in a metaphysical, mental, physical.
Yeah, so it definitely helps a lot of issues, physical, mental, emotional issues. Interestingly, with Kundalini, because it's one of its primary purposes, in my opinion, is to examine and disassemble belief structures we carry around, which create our sense of identity. Those very belief structures are what are the foundation for many emotional problems and mental problems, because they are blocks to smooth mental and emotional functioning. So as they're removed, all sorts of mental illness just disappears spontaneously. At the core, I have my partner is a counselor, psychological counselor. And she often talks a lot about how helping people with mental illness largely amounts to just giving them coping mechanisms, new ways of seeing things, but you haven't really got at the root of the issue. It's very, very difficult to get to the root of these issues because they're based on beliefs that we hold as our identity. And our identity is our most treasured possession. We're not going to give it up if at all possible.
Even if it's killed, even if it kills you.
Yeah. So people would rather hold on to that and die than change.
Yeah.
So the core of most mental and emotional issues is rarely touched upon, even by the wildest types of breath work and what have you. If they are touched upon, people usually reflexively freak out and gather it even in tighter. Kundalini, by undermining the very fabric of these roots of our mental and emotional issues, allows them to be permanently eliminated. Just like you talked about Wayne Lickerman earlier, alcoholism, to the degree he had it, that's not something you're going to fix in one lifetime by any conventional approach or alternative approach for that matter. He may be able to cope with it better and keep it suppressed a little better and be a, quote, more functional alcoholic, but he's still an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Kundalini will undermine the very core of the source of the alcoholism.
The alcoholic himself is gone.
Perfect. Exactly. So yeah, in that sense, there's a lot of healing benefit, just like as with fast.
So it's super healing. Just go for it. It's awesome.
But that was Wayne who said that?
That was Rob C.
Rob, but as we talked about earlier, as far as forcefully trying to elicit Kundalini, that's very dangerous business. I never recommend that.
Don't play with fire.
Just do what you can to prepare this body and mind for your Kundalini experience when it's going to finally happen on its own.
Okay, Patrick is saying, sometimes I can kind of smell this strong process, and there is a great longing there to become 100% normal. But then comes my responsibilities, company, relation, paying bills, etc. Welcome to my world. Could you please give some thoughts on this fight, or should I just drop everything and trust the higher will, ready to lose it all? I just want to say, the first thing I asked Robert about when I met him, and he explained to me what's going on, and I instantly could sense this guy was like not normal. The first thing I asked him is, how do you stay functional? because if you go, I mean, you didn't have a job back then, right? You didn't have to work when you went through this.
No, fortunately, I just started an online business, and it provided just enough income that I could devote my time to this process.
So can you imagine if you had to go to work and pay mortgages and have 3 kids and a wife that wants to do stuff with you and etc.? How do you think your process would have been?
I would answer that by saying Kundalini knows what you need at all times. So if some part of you needs a wife and a kids and jobs and a mortgage and all those responsibilities, then it's going to just turn on to the degree that doesn't upset all that too much, and just do some work preparing for the time when you're going to get serious enough and your spiritual work becomes important enough that you're willing to set all that aside. May not be this lifetime, may not be for 10 more lifetimes.
So it's all or nothing, basically.
For me, it was.
Yeah.
Other people seem to have Kundalini. I often talk about it if like a volume knob from 1 to 10. For most people in their daily lives, Kundalini is at 1, maybe 2, just kind of idling along, providing you enough energy
to be alive
and awareness to conduct basic daily life stuff. You start getting a little bit spiritual. You start opening yourself a little bit in different ways with different spiritual practice. It's creeping up a little bit, and you're getting some good feelings. Oh, this is pretty neat. I like this. It's teasing you to keep you going, right? So your soul's maturing, all that stuff. And then when time comes for Kundalini to really kick on, it will only do so, I guess you could say, with two primary conditions being met. One is that your body and mind is sufficiently prepared to handle the energy movement through you, which is tremendous. And the other thing is that your desire is there for it. So in other words, you will slowly morph into a situation, spiritually speaking, where eventually spiritual issues and your spiritual seeking becomes your most important desire in your life.
Mm.
Everything else becomes secondary.
Yeah.
You still may do some of these other things just to get along in life, but if this process is going to kick in at that intensity, at least like I experience,
you better be ready.
The rest of life has to take a backseat.
Yeah.
Just has to.
So it's full on. It's hardcore. It's the warrior's path. So yes, trust higher will and be ready to lose it all. That's the answer. You answered yourself.
And that's a critical part of.
You have to be willing to lose it all. You have to be ready, because I mean, I can tell you, I had so many of my identities. I was heavily identified as a martial artist. I was like a champion, national champion, and still going strong. And I was just like, it's all me. And I just realized that I'm not that. And then it's like, then what am I? Like,
that's a heck of a realization.
And then I'm not that, and I'm not that. I'm not a boyfriend. I'm not a martial artist. I'm not, and everything just fell apart for me. My whole world fell apart. Everything crumbled and fell apart. And
all the identities you were holding up
totally
crashed.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
Like demolition on steroids, and I will admit that that was not a pretty experience. Like I was not approaching this with a yogic smile, sitting there thinking it's all good. It was really it was hardcore. So you gotta be ready. You gotta be ready. Everything you think you are is going down the drain, and it may not ever come back again. So Xiao is saying, will consciousness will Kundalini override the coming into physical forms lives? Has your state of Kundalini come to a state of knowing one's true state of ? Do we need a body or one source of being created into ? Such as a species ? Universal family ? Human Pleiadian as an example ? Formless ? Do you understand this?
Not sure. What are you picking up from it?
I don't know
No, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Cheryl, maybe you can break it down into one simpler question.
Like one sentence, clear question. Keep in mind, we are not very smart, intelligent people here. We need very simple English, right? Yeah. John Smith is saying, can we sync our pineal gland and the Kundalini without the dramatic effects of intense Kundalini driving us crazy? Most of us do not have near-death experiences or very intense trauma. So what is the best way to start the process to bring the Kundalini slowly? ?
Yeah. John, again, what we're talking about here is an intelligent life force in you that knows exactly what it's doing. It knows when to turn on, when to turn off, how intense to turn on, how long to last. Trust that. It goes against all of our sense of desire. When we want something, we want it. You know, I want my Kundalini. But I'm telling you, because I had the same desire when I finally came to understand what Kundalini was, and I started having some of these amazing experiences. I want more, give me more. You know, what do I got to do? In the bigger picture, though, to realize that the Kundalini has far greater intelligence than you do, you kind of learn to surrender and trust to it.
Mm-hmm.
And to the degree you surrender and trust in its movements on its own time and schedule, that results in a much more sense of peace inside about the whole process. The more of trust and surrender you have to the process, the easier the process goes.
I think the word surrender is a key word. And I think also the word surrender is something we in the West are having a lot of problems with, because we equal it with defeat. And in a sense it is a defeat, but you have it's a blissful defeat. You're allowing yourself to die on the altar of truth. So it's a blissful surrender. In the end it is. In the beginning may not, but surrender is the key, at least.
So yeah, the main bottom line, trust the process to work of its own accord. It could be that your soul, your process of maturing your soul requires an uncomfortable blast of Kundalini, or maybe a very blissful blast of, who knows what you need. No, but you don't.
Everybody's
even know.
Different.
Yes.
Yeah. You had 4 years of intense burning and then it was over. Other people, it's going to be maybe completely different.
Yep. And so our ego, who has co-opted our spiritual desire and has decided what it wants spirituality to look like, may be completely different than what our higher Kundalini self knows we need. But it also knows this little pain in the butt ego with all its desires and manipulations has to run its course as part of the maturing process.
Mm-hmm.
So Kundalini is like a wise parent
Mm.
watching their children make all kind of mistakes,
Yeah.
and just letting them make their mistakes and fixing their bruised knees and their cut elbows and putting them right back on the playground.
Mm.
That's what's got to happen.
So good question, John. Shell is saying, can ordinary lifestyle of inner knowingness be enough, and then the light bulb comes from a means of letting go, be a form of activation? Attachment is what I am hearing from this dialogue, letting go. Yes.
Yeah.
Can an ordinary lifestyle of inner knowingness be enough?
Well, we talked earlier, depending on how a soul is maturing,
Mm.
it could be your last lifetime is somewhat of a criminal lifetime. I don't know. I don't have any answers. We like to think that, oh, we have lifetimes. I'm a criminal this time, and I'm a priest that time, and I'm a mother, and I'm a father, and whatever. We go through all these lifetimes, and that they're slowly evolving, and we're getting nicer and kinder and sweeter and gentler.
Better human beings.
Yeah, better, higher, like you were saying earlier, right? No, not necessarily that way at all. The point is that the soul is maturing in its own way and on its own schedule. So we never know when this process might kick in. That said, spiritual practices, a life of inner contemplation and striving for peace and nonviolence and all these sort of things. Heck yeah. I mean, I hope there's more and more people like that all the time, but that's not what triggers Kundalini. That just helps satisfy the needs for your soul's maturity in that lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
And also, I would say the natural hygiene that you're talking about is also part of a good
preparation.
Yeah. So if you have an ordinary lifestyle and inner knowingness, then I think definitely still preparing, clearing the ground, just sowing the seeds.
Now, in my process, this lifetime, I got very interested in natural hygiene and healthful living practices because of some personal health concerns. So that triggered that, and I got into it extremely intensely. Where somebody else might come across a new therapy for their particular health condition, and it seems to take care of it more or less, that's good enough for most people. But for me, I got into this thing and I just went crazy into it. I just really got into it. Why did I do that? I don't know. My soul needed it, wanted it. Yeah.
And you wanted to get to the bottom of it.
Yes. So I had that spark inside that said, I'm going to get to the core of this. And it was infinitely fascinating. The more I kept zeroing in, more and more refining. So we can't really make sense of a lot of daily life activities and how they're impacting what we're talking about here. It's impossible to really put the pieces together. It's too big of a puzzle for us to make sense of.
Yeah.
But if we just trust and surrender to the process, get in touch with our deeper core desires, play them out, you can be assured you're doing the best possible thing.
Good. And Cheryl also says, earthly identifiers, yogi, meditation, other means of expression when knowing we are more than this life 3D to 5D illusion expressions, for example. I think it's connected to the other question up there. Okay, John Smith says, can the Kundalini be a good experience or bad? Yes. So if it goes to a dark side, is there a way to stop the bad experience? How do we know when we are ready to practice, and what is the best practice for it? So I just want to say quickly that you may think it's a bad experience, but from the perspective of Kundalini, it may be a really good experience because it's serving its purpose of purifying you, which may feel bad for you. So good and bad is the mind judging it. But there is also, I've heard people having stuck Kundalini in certain chakras, ending up in mental hospitals and stuff like that. So
it happens.
It happens.
9 times out of 10, it doesn't. Kundalini knows what it's doing. It's going to do what it needs to do. It's often our human response to it, drugging or, well, that's the most common things. Some Kundalini researchers have speculated that up to half of mental hospital inmates, you might say, patients, are Kundalini cases that were not handled well.
I believe it.
The psychiatric profession saw this person seemingly losing their mind and having hallucinations and visions and crazy sensations inside, had no way to judge what was going on, so they just drugged the heck out of them and incarcerated them in mental hospitals. So it can happen. It's pretty rare nowadays. People are becoming more aware of these things somewhat. But and that, you know, that brings up an interesting issue, kind of along the lines of something we talked about earlier. If and when our human species can become a little wiser, a little more spiritually aware, we will notice when people are showing symptoms of an intense Kundalini awakening, and we will take care of them. We will support them in numerous ways to go through this process as gracefully as possible, because we know that people who have gone through this have a whole new perspective on things and can often give a lot of insight into the dilemmas that our ego-saturated world are causing for themselves. So basically, even ancient cultures, ancient Indian cultures, understood Kundalini process.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of native peoples do in their own way, and they know this is a special person. Something special is happening.
Yeah.
This is a special time in this person's life, in this person's soul evolution. We need to support this. Learn
So
from this.
in India, they just leave him alone and feed him, give him him or her food and water and shelter, and let them go through whatever they need to go through.
Yes, I read a story about some Native American spiritual practices and so on. And there was a story about this one particular member of this tribe who was apparently, to me, going through a very strong Kundalini process. And the way the Native American storytellers described it was that he so connected with the Great Spirit that he lost his identity. Perfect. That's
Perfect.
exactly what Kundalini does. It removes our false identity.
So in the last part of the question is, how do we know when we're ready to the practice, and what is the best practice for it?
Whatever you desire to do. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but
I think it's a perfect answer, because there's no one answer for everybody.
I can't say do this kind of meditation for 3 hours a day, or, you know, stretch in this posture, or recite this mantra. I don't know. Try your best. And here's again where I think meditation is very helpful. Any kind of contemplative practice where you just quiet yourself down, shut out the world and all its distractions as much as you can, in order to hear the quiet voice inside that is always telling you what you need to do next. Yeah. It's always guiding us. It's trying to.
The silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheryl says, what are the bells and whistles you speak of on enjoy the way I am now, joy and inner peace now. Thank you and blessings.
I did say bells and whistles, but I'm not sure what we were talking about at the time.
What are the best bells and whistles you speak on? Okay, so Steve says, should we start to awaken the third eye first before working on Kundalini?
Kundalini is what is awakening your third eye.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around.
No.
And in a very real sense, your third eye and every other chakra, every other energy center is already awakened. They're just covered with layers and layers of blockages, which we spoke about in depth earlier. So the core part of this process is removing those blockages. So it's not like there's a you that's awakening your third eye. It just happens as part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to try to do any of these things. They just happen in their own time.
Yeah. And third eye awakening is related to cities, and cities can be a distraction for the ego to be fascinated with all the colors and rainbows and different realities and all stuff, but it has nothing to do with awakening in itself. So the focus is the awakening and the Kundalini. The third eye is just a side effect. Sane is saying around the age of 40, we experience a midlife crisis opportunity that changes the course of our life. More soul-based, less ego. Is Kundalini the driving force behind this period of our lives? How old were you when you had your awakening?
My awakening in a big way happened when I was 43. So it ties right in with
Spot on.
what Zane's saying. Yeah, I think you're right, Zane. It's kind of by the age of 40, hopefully, we've had enough basic life experience that just in general, generally speaking, we don't get quite as wrapped up in achievement anymore, at least for quite a few people. So yeah, there's a shift. And that correlates with hormonal shifts and the way our body operates on a physiological level, as well as the subtle bodies and mental and emotional level. So yeah, that's a good point. Two people I've worked with who had Kundalini awakenings in a big way in their early and mid 20s did not handle it well, in the sense of, we could say, speculate, that their sense of human maturity wasn't sufficiently established that they could flow with the Kundalini process and surrender to it quite as easily. When you're in your 20s, you're in this take charge of life and make things happen kind of mode. So when Kundalini suddenly kicks in at that age, you're probably thinking, I need to control this as much as possible, or try to be this way about it or that way about it, or you kind of get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, it's probably a little more difficult at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
And then at an older age, the body's usually losing somewhat of its ability to handle the intensity of the energy running through it. So it can be difficult physiologically at an older age, just from the fact that we start breaking down and things don't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think you're right, Zane. Somewhere between 35 and maybe 50 might be the ideal times for this to happen, when our body and mind can handle it the best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would
Yeah.
be my.
And I totally agree with that. So I had my experience in age 21, and it was a mess, honestly. I would say if I could sit in time this and get everything the way I wanted, I would have gladly waited till my 40s, because it was a mess, because I had a lot of personal stuff that I had to figure out in this time period as well. Like there's a lot of things happening. So I totally agree with if you're too young when this happens, then maybe it's not gonna. It can quickly end up not being that pretty. Cheryl says, lately I have been interested in and studying trauma release, mostly on an individual basis, but also on a collective basis. Is this part of Kundalini awakening, or comment?
Well, I'll start from what I experienced with my Kundalini, and it goes in, dissects, and disengages all the components of traumas, of beliefs, of everything I took on that created my ego. So in that sense, yes, it directly addresses it. And it addresses it at the core, as we were talking about before, whereas counseling and therapies and so on only address things sort of on a superficial level. Kundalini is getting right down to the root. When we're looking at trauma release, trauma identification, and then trauma release, from a non-Kundalini perspective, the best I would say we can do is sort of file down the rough edges, make it somewhat smoother, easier to cope with, deal with, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
So since Kundalini is our very life force that in a very real sense created our blockages on purpose to teach us
that's
certain
actually
lessons.
an interesting. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
It's the life force that's doing all this. We consider traumas bad, but Kundalini says, our life force says, you need a trauma right now
Yeah.
in order to get the next lesson. There's no other way.
Yeah.
So boom, here's a trauma.
Yeah.
And now somebody else looks and says, oh, you've got this trauma. We need to help you
Let's
release
fix
it.
Yeah.
Well, who in the heck do you think you are?
Yeah.
I know better than Kundalini what you need to do with this trauma.
Yeah.
That's the attitude.
Yeah.
So while the intent,
that's a big point. This is
it's
huge. This is huge.
While the intention is good, you want to relieve suffering. The soul says, I need this suffering right now because for reasons you don't even understand yet.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, how efficient are we really in fixing other people?
Which is why,
not to mention ourselves.
Yeah. Speak of the worst case scenario right in the mirror there. I went and got a chiropractic. I dropped my engineering related career and went back to school and got a chiropractic degree in order to practice natural hygiene professionally and supervise fasting professionally. And so as soon as I got out of chiropractic school, for all intents and purposes, I got my chiropractic licensure in Florida and then dropped chiropractic completely. Because the whole point of chiropractic is to try to fix you from the outside from problems I think you have, and I'm going to do so with this particular chiropractic adjustment, which inherently says the body is too stupid to know how to fix its own maladjustment problems.
Yeah.
In fact, chiropractors compared to the medical paradigm and the osteopathic paradigm, naturopathic paradigm, acupuncture paradigm, all these therapeutic techniques feel that the body is not smart enough to know what it's doing and why. Mm-hmm. And we have to go in and fix it using artificial methods that don't belong in a healthy lifestyle at all to begin with.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a healthy way to adjust the neck, fundamentally speaking.
Yeah.
There's no need for little needles in your body ever in a healthy lifestyle. There's no need for drugs. There's no need for any kind of therapy, pretty much. In a healthy lifestyle. So once I fundamentally understood that, I realized, wow, the wisdom and intelligence of the body is doing exactly what it knows it needs to do to heal itself every moment as best as it can under the conditions you give it. So if you give yourself good conditions, the body will heal to its maximum capability. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Couple that with a soul perspective, and the soul and Kundalini life force that's driving the soul is giving us all the experiences it needs to maximally mature itself and heal itself and get itself to the end of this egoic stage of consciousness we human beings are all involved in. So again, to presume that we know better what we need than our Kundalini life force or even just our body intelligence for basic health reasons is arrogance.
It's
personified.
It's super arrogance.
Yes. It's a difficult understanding to grasp and trust and surrender to, because when you see somebody in pain and suffering, you want to help.
Yeah.
The question is how to do that the best. Yeah.
But I feel spot on with the fasting, because you're not doing anything. You just stop eating. So it's not, you're not interfering. Right. You're actually stepping out of the way. You're just stopping an activity and it's the time for the body now to take care of itself.
In natural hygiene, when fasting people, we call it the best way to do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's kind of, so meditation is to sit and do nothing. So You're not trying to fix anything. You're just meditating. And fasting is to stop. So there's the yin and the yang. So the yang is to try to fix things and influence and implement, and it's a lot of activity. It's very male, where the yin is very feminine and it's very patient and just relaxing, and just this is the non-doing.
And there's a time to do
and time to not do.
And if your doing is based on an inner sense of a clean inner sense of this is what I need to do, then it happens effortlessly, and the results are the best possible. If it's done from any other perspective, it's bound to screw things up eventually.
We are totally on the same page with all this. Totally, yeah. It's awesome. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, man. We can continue for hours here. Steve writes, this really parallels the law of one material. Have you read this? Have you read the law of one?
I haven't heard that description.
Ra is attempting to explain that the one infinite creator is, and how intelligent infinity flows throughout the universe, and more focused intelligent energy through the mind, body, spirit complex. Third density, where we exist now, ends with the choice. It is time to harvest and move to next density of fourth. Therefore, Kundalini activation appear as the final steps of third density, where our body evolves and this veil of forgetting is no longer needed. Can you add your thoughts, please? Thanks, Steve. And so I read the law of one material, and I fully agree. It's in alignment with all the stuff we're talking about.
Steve, just right on. That sounds exactly correct. And as I'm describing Kundalini, we have egos to teach us lessons for this particular stage of conscious soul evolution. Now, I know we can argue about all kind of little details about that, but the bottom line is, if we're going to go with the idea that we're each learning lessons and evolving, then ego has a definite purpose, to be an overlay to set the stage for learning a lot of lessons. And when that's served its purpose over however many lifetimes, then it served its purpose. Kundalini cranks up in a big way, does its job of dismantling all that, and now we move on to the next thing, as you would say, the fourth level.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to see if we can get to the bottom of all these questions, because we already been running for like 2 hours now. So I know people are gonna get tired. The attention span after a couple of hours, we start checking out. Carol says, thanks, you're right about all experience being in the present moment, this being eternal time as opposed to linear clock time. My question was about the way we live in each lifetime. Some can be lives of gain, such as God consciousness and service to others from the heart. Some lives are at loss, perhaps you did a great harm and did not resolve this in the same lifetime. Yeah. Okay, next. Cheryl, how can life force be in degrees? I think it's like electricity. You can have a lot of it or less of it, and that's it. There's just more or less of it.
And it seems to me that life force inside us responds to events with the appropriate amount necessary. So if you suddenly are in a nasty car accident, your body's getting all banged around, Kundalini is going to instantly crank up in order to keep you alive and keep things together as best as it can under those circumstances.
Or how can life force be in degrees, or implementing the experience due to how man thinks in boxes? Moving on. When it was complete a temporary state of limit.
Group fast.
Okay, group. So you guys are for group fasting. Okay, that's awesome. Lynn says, there are a lot of questions before the discussion on fasting, but I would love to do a group fast. Can you put something on the forum when you start your fast? And also people can check in with each other on how we're doing. Okay, so I can say personally, I'm gonna fast, I think mid next week I'm gonna start. a fast. And so I'm assuming you guys are interested, and if you are, I will inform everybody. And I don't know if you're interested in maybe you want to guide us on this, because I mean, you're the expert here. So would you guide us as a group?
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd participate too.
That's awesome. Okay, so I will coordinate something with Robert, and then I'll send out some emails for members only. And so we will be a small group of people fasting together.
You have a forum where people can be in contact and so on?
I have a forum, and I'll show you. You can log in, and then we can make a thread together. And every day there will be updates. You can maybe post some knowledge and fasting and all that stuff. And also, if you want, we can do a Skype, not Skype, Zoom. We can connect on Zoom. Maybe let's say, I don't know how many days we're gonna fast, but maybe one time per day we can just check in for 30 minutes, 1 hour, or something like that.
Yeah, right. That would be good.
Yeah.
The only thing I would wonder is if everybody's familiar enough and trusting enough in their own body to go for a water fast right off the bat, or do they need something more gentle first? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. You need to decide that. I'm gonna do water fasting, and I think there's people out there who are super experienced, and then there's people who never done it before. So we're gonna have maybe some people should do juices, and others
that's what I was just thinking. We could do it at the same time. Some people could do water, some people could do juices. And that would work fine.
So we can make a hybrid version, and we can all collectively support each other this way. Okay, so I'll coordinate something. I'll set it up. So it's happening. Oh, it's good. Finally. So write with the big letters from beginning to end if you want me to read it. Shell says, communication create within oneself as universes, macro, micro, and beyond the illusion of form. Question. So Shell, you need to write as a real question. Okay, so Carol says, okay, you say ego is a bunch of bits that have to be carefully picked apart to make way for the Kundalini to awaken.
No, hang on. What that means, what I'm saying is Kundalini takes apart your ego bit by bit because it's made of many bits.
Mm-hmm. There's a difference.
So Kundalini is already active in doing that. It just has never started the process of actively doing that before. It let the bits stay in place because there was issues and lessons to learn through that illusion of ego. Once the purpose of the ego is done, that's when Kundalini awakens in a big way and starts picking this apart permanently. Yeah.
And so her question is, surely anyone could help this along through intuition, but don't you think it would be good for most of us to link with teachers to guide us in preparation?
Sure. If you feel led to work with a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a guru, then do it as well as you can and go in with as clear an intention as you can for what you feel you need from it. Mm-hmm. Don't get distracted by sidetracks or anything else. If you want to really get intense with your meditation, for example, find a meditation teacher or guru who you really resonate with and work it with that. Don't get distracted by other practices. Go hardcore with that for a while. See how it goes.
Yeah. I can say from my own experience, I was in my early 20s when my spine was completely on fire and Kundalini was crazy. And I had a person that I saw almost every day that I visited because I was freaking out. And if he has not been around back then, I don't know what I would have. I have no. It would have not. It would have been a mess. It would have been really bad. But I had a guy sitting there on a daily basis, and he was holding my hand basically and saying, don't worry, it's all okay. Don't worry, because he's been through the process himself. And for me, that was a huge help. Like, I owe this man my life.
It's funny you said that in exactly the words you did. Probably 90% of people I supervise fasting, especially long fasts, 99% of my job is holding their hand and saying, everything will be fine. Don't worry, everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So we're just a bunch of kids who just need somebody to hold our hands, and it's totally okay. What is Kundalini? Xiao says, what is Kundalini within and without one's body? Within and without one's body. Purpose in body. Purpose when we do not have a body. Does not tied to the rebirth cycle have application here?
Sheesh, I don't know about that. Well, when you're not in a body, there's certainly still life force, conscious, aware energy everywhere. But I guess that's the reason we have a body, right? Is to densify and form and
we're spiritualizing matter.
Play games with this form. Yeah.
On the other side, you're already the Buddha. You're already the Christ.
Yeah,
you're already the enlightened one. So we are spiritualizing matter. Zane is saying, a friend of mine experienced a Kundalini awakening to a degree that her unusual behavior alarmed her family and some friends to the point where she got on prescribed medication to return to normal. What would you recommend to her as an alternative to taking medication? Is this artificial suppression of the Kundalini flow dangerous? So I just want to give you guys a little story. When I had my crazy Kundalini experience myself, I found myself running around naked in the forest at one point. And also I was sleeping on rooftops. Like I was really, my friends actually got so concerned that they actually did think about contacting some psychiatrist to take care of me. And I kept on telling them, hey, listen, it's all okay. I'm not insane. I think I'm not insane. I don't know. Maybe I am insane. And it's like, and so it really was extreme at one point. And so getting on, luckily nobody put me on medication and I kept my own freedom.
Zane, the bottom line is that person needs to be put in surroundings of supportive people who understand. I mean, that's the best.
Yeah, you need to be around people.
And I don't know how open this person might be, but whether it's a monastery, a temple, an ashram, those kind of places, they're especially for people going through spiritual upheavals. Mm-hmm. So they understand and can support that kind of person.
Yeah. So, but definitely no medication. This is not a good idea. And in the United States, they medicate everybody with everything all the time. So John Smith says, by the time we type out the questions, you already answered the questions. I don't want to tempt the Kundalini. How do we know the Kundalini is working subtle or intense? Is it a feeling? Yes. Well, I can say if it's intense, you definitely will know it. There's no doubt. It's not like, I wonder. No, it's not. You definitely gotta know.
It takes over, right?
You're gonna know. Thoughts or dream. Is it a physical symptoms? Yes. Emotional or both? It's everything. Imagine your spine is lit on fire, burning 24/7 at full power. And you will have emotional responses to it on top, and mental responses and physical. That's kind of like, would that describe it?
That would get your attention,
Yeah.
I used to often feel like I had ants crawling inside my skull. Mm-hmm. And it was unnerving. Freaks you out.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night, like my spine was just like in a bow. Like a total, and I just in the middle of the night, just sleeping, just totally, and then this loud noise, just like I had a drill machine inside my head.
Wow!
And I was screaming, and I was like, what? And it was just, and then because I woke up, it started calming down again. And so, yeah.
You know, Hatha yoga, all the postures and practices, that's what that's about. And Kundalini yoga as well. The idea for doing those postures is just to make your body real supple and loose. So when the energy is flowing, you don't have to necessarily go through all those intense.
Yeah.
They'll just spontaneously happen easily instead of,
Yeah.
locked in place.
Yeah.
And for that matter, that's where these postures came from.
Yes.
That's where they it's not like somebody sat around thinking of postures. They were watching people going through Kundalini.
Yeah.
And they said,
And
oh, that's going to happen. So maybe I'll do it now and get myself used to it.
Yeah. Which is also why a lot of yoga postures are twisting the spine and bending this way and that way, because they say a flexible spine gives a flexible mind, and a flexible mind gives a long and happy life. But what it really is preparing for the Kundalini.
There it is.
Fasting. Steve Rice wants to join the fasting. That's awesome. Karen is in, and Shell.
She wants to be
included. So Lou wants to fast. Okay, so you all guys are. That's awesome. John. Okay, we're getting to the bottom of questions. John Smith. If we are at the end of our many lifetimes, is this when Kundalini becomes very intense before we go on our journey to fifth dimension, the next level? I am new to this Kundalini.
Yeah.
John, first of all, there's no such thing as stupid questions. And if you're new, just ask away. And by the way, you're asking good questions.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Just as we've said multiple times, Kundalini is going to kick in to the intensity necessary to completely dismantle your ego when the time is right. It may flare up periodically before that final long process of awakening, and it'll do whatever work it needs to do, but it'll always subside back down to a more or less normal level if it's not time for the final rodeo.
Yeah. So we've been going at it for now more than 2 hours, and everybody seems to be in on fasting. Now, question for you guys, because I want to stop now because we want to keep this within a normal human attention span reality. So my question is, do you guys want Robert back on a live event on a Saturday session to go more in depth? Today was a lot about Kundalini. We can talk about also other aspects, and maybe, for example, fasting in details, etc. So if you guys want to see him again, just let me know. Yes to Robert. Yes. Okay, good.
Great.
They like you.
Great.
Yeah. Good. So yeah. So
one quick question. Somebody in there mentioned contraindications to fasting. Yes, there are some, and especially if there's any active disease or chronic disease processes, we should take those into consideration. There's only very, very few oddball situations that totally contraindicate fasting. In other words, those people shouldn't fast at all. And it's usually a metabolic problem, a genetic thing. For most other people, it's fine. But if somebody's actively ill with a particular disease, especially a chronic disease, that can make their fast much more challenging. So if anybody who's going to join in on our fast has any particular current health concern that they are worried about or have questions about, let's just bring the questions to us, and I'll respond to them for you.
So what I'll do is, do you mind if I share your email address too? Because
sure.
This is a small group of people. My guess is we're going to be maybe 10, 15 people doing this fast. And so can I share your email address with these people?
Yeah, we'll use the Transformation Institute address.
Yeah. And then if you guys are having something where you're worried if it's a good idea for you to fast, if you're in some specific condition or something, then speak to Dr. Robert about this, and you will get proper guidance.
Good. Good.
Okay.
And I noticed some questions on keto, medications, intermittent fasting, and so on. Maybe we can compile some of these questions, and I'll lay out a little bullet point thing that everybody can read before we start, just so hopefully it answers those kind of questions and they feel more confident with the process.
Yeah.
And how fast are you talking? How
long
long
a
a fast are we talking?
I'm fasting really fast, just so you know. So what I do in one day, it takes normal people 7 days to do.
What do you mean?
I'm fasting really fast. So my one day is the equivalent of 7 for normal people.
Get out of here. Maybe the hydrogen does it, huh?
Yeah. So how long a fast do we talk about?
Well, as I said earlier, if people haven't done water fasting before, we might try it. They might want to try it. Or we can do a juice fast. I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 days. If people have done water fasting before, they feel confident, no problem. What do you think? 3 days, 5 days? Relatively short, I think is smart.
Between 3 to 5, yeah. So maybe what we can do, we do a hybrid kind of thing, so people can choose, and they can choose the juices or the water, and they can choose 3 days or 5 days, and so like keep it open. So because everybody's individual, and we take it from there. So I'll share his email, and then we do a thread on the forum. So all questions on the forum will be addressed. And then also I'm going to send out an invitation to all members for the fast when we start it up. And my guess is mid next week, or what's good for you?
Pretty much anytime.
Anytime, yeah.
Yeah.
You're like a hardcore faster. You can he's gonna make us all look like babies.
You know, actually, and I always tell this to my patients, I'm actually a terrible faster.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, it's so nice to hear.
I have a particular genetic problem, I guess, aberration. There's certain liver enzymes we have that, it's a long, complicated thing. But the bottom line is the liver does most of the work when fasting, does most of the detoxification work. And there's a small bit of less than ideal functioning I have in my liver with this particular enzyme, where other people works fine, 100%, mine's like 85 or 90%. Well, that particular enzyme is very involved in detoxification processes with water fasting, especially intensely. So because I'm not full speed with that enzyme, my fast, oh man, after 5 days, I'm useless.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can still fast, but it's very hard for me.
So we're going to be 2 people looking useless. I thought it was only me. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. No, fasting is not a competition. I just like to make fun of everything. That's what it's all about. And one day, Cheryl, if you want to do just one day, it's all good. It's perfect, you know. So if I have done fasting before, so I'm okay with doing longer than that. But if this is the first time, 24 hours is perfect.
Cheryl, another good one. You can eat, say, 1 day, 2 days before starting the fast, or 1 day before starting the fast. Just eat nothing but fruit all day. Fruit is very easy to digest, high water content. Then the first day of the fast, do juices. Second day of the fast, just water. Third day of the fast, juices. You're good to go.
Oh yeah, that's another way of doing it.
Options like that. Yeah, many different options here.
Yeah. I will make a fasting thread on the forum, so we all can write in there and answer whatever questions there will be. I have a damaged heart and high blood pressure, and am not under doctor's care due to health insurance. Can I fast?
Probably. I would need to know much more details to give a, honest expert opinion. But for what we're talking about, or even something as gentle as just a juice fast, just about anybody can do that. It's always going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Elliot, maybe give more details to Robert when the email goes out, and we can take it to that. John Smith, how long? 2 days to 2 weeks done a 30-day fast? Question mark.
Oh, well, we're just talking 3 or several days. So
I'm gonna fast 8 or 10 months, and then so
I've supervised fasts up to 45 days.
45
really
days.
obese people who
Yeah.
have plenty of reserves.
Big boys can handle it.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I could do 45, no problem. I mean, except for my mind, of course. Okay, so this was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Did you enjoy yourself? Let's see. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So people are enjoying it. Okay. Good. So I will. You will hear from. You will hear from me. I will send out an email to all the members with his email address and also to a link to the forum, and then we take it from there. So see you next time.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
Thank you so much, man.
All right.
It's awesome.
Good to see and hear from everybody.
Ciao.